The wind howled through the canyons of Colorado Territory like a mournful spirit as Katherine Zimmer fought against the ropes binding her to the gnarled oak tree. Her wrists were raw from struggling, blood trickling down her arms as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the rugged mountains. The bandits had left her there to die, a cruel punishment for refusing the advances of their leader, a man known only as the Scorpion. "You'll change your mind by morning," the Scorpion had whispered in her ear before riding away with his gang, "if the wolves don't find you first." Katherine shuddered at the memory. At 22, she had already endured more hardship than most women twice her age. After losing her family to typhoid 3 years prior, she had made the journey west from Boston to start anew. Her small ranch outside Silver Creek had been her pride, a symbol of her independence in a land dominated by men. Now, as darkness enveloped the landscape, that independence felt like a cruel joke. The sound of approaching hoofbeats sent a jolt of terror through her body. Had the Scorpion returned to see if she'd reconsidered his proposition? Katherine held her breath, straining to see through the gathering darkness. A lone rider emerged from the shadows, his silhouette tall and imposing against the deepening twilight. As he drew closer, the moonlight revealed a weather-beaten face partially obscured by a dark bandana. His eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the area before fixing on Katherine. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse from hours of screaming for help, "please don't hurt me." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, approaching cautiously. "Madam, I'm not here to cause harm." His voice was deep, with a slight drawl that marked him as not being from these parts originally. "The name's Xavier Quincy. I heard screaming earlier while tracking a bounty. Took me a while to find the source." Katherine watched as he pulled a knife from his boot. For a moment, fear gripped her heart, but instead of threatening her, he began cutting through the ropes. "The Scorpion and his men did this?" Xavier asked, working methodically through the thick bindings. Katherine nodded, wincing as circulation returned to her numbed limbs. "How did you know? Their handiwork is recognizable." As the last rope fell away, Katherine collapsed forward, her legs unable to support her weight after hours of standing. Xavier caught her with surprising gentleness for a man of his size. "Easy now," he murmured, helping her to a nearby rock. "Let your blood flow return before trying to stand." "Thank you," Katherine said, rubbing her wrists. "They took my horse, my supplies, everything." Xavier reached for his canteen, offering it to her. "Drink slowly. It's been a warm day and you're likely dehydrated." The water was cool and felt like heaven against her parched throat. Katherine drank gratefully, studying her rescuer in the moonlight. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense. His nose had been broken at least once, and a scar ran along his jawline, but there was something compelling about his features, a quiet strength that reassured her. "We need to move," Xavier said, glancing around. "The Scorpion sometimes leaves men behind to watch his handiwork. My camp is about 2 miles east of here. Can you ride?" Katherine nodded, though she wasn't entirely certain. Her entire body ached and exhaustion pulled at her like quicksand. "I can manage." Xavier helped her onto his horse, a magnificent black stallion, before mounting behind her. His arms encircled her as he took the reins, his chest solid against her back. Despite the danger of their situation, Katherine found herself acutely aware of his proximity. "Hold on," he instructed, spurring the horse into motion. They rode in silence through the darkness, the only sounds the rhythmic beat of hooves and the occasional call of a night bird. Katherine fought to stay awake, the gentle swaying of the horse and the warmth of Xavier's body threatening to lull her into sleep. "What's your name?" Xavier's voice startled her back to full consciousness. "Katherine Zimmer." Well, Miss Zimmer, you're either very brave or very foolish to have settled in these parts alone. A flicker of indignation cut through her exhaustion. I manage quite well, Mr. Quincy, or I did until today. She felt rather than heard his chuckle. I meant no offense. It's just that the Colorado Territory isn't kind to anyone these days, especially not to a woman on her own. And what brought you to this unkind territory? Katherine asked, partly to keep herself alert and partly out of genuine curiosity. Xavier was quiet for so long that Katherine thought he might not answer. I'm tracking the Scorpion, he finally said. He and his gang robbed a stagecoach near Denver 3 months ago, killed the driver and a passenger, a young woman who happened to be the governor's niece. There's a substantial bounty on his head. You're a bounty hunter, among other things. I was a marshal back in Texas for a time. They crested a small rise, and Katherine saw the glow of a campfire in a protected hollow below. Xavier guided his horse down the slope with practiced ease. His camp was simple but well organized: a small fire, a bedroll and saddlebags propped against a fallen log. A coffee pot sat at the edge of the flames, and the aroma made Katherine realize how hungry she was. Xavier helped her dismount, steadying her when her legs threatened to give way. Rest, he said, guiding her to the bedroll. I'll see to the horse and get you something to eat. Too exhausted to argue, Katherine sank onto the blankets, watching as Xavier cared for his stallion with efficient movements. Despite her ordeal, she felt strangely safe in this stranger's camp, a feeling she couldn't entirely explain. Xavier returned with a tin plate of beans and jerky. It's not much, he apologized, handing it to her along with a battered tin cup filled with coffee. It's perfect, Katherine assured him, eating with more enthusiasm than decorum. The food was simple but reviving, and the coffee, strong and black, helped clear the fog from her mind. As she ate, Xavier tended to her wrists, cleaning the rope burns with water from his canteen and applying a salve that smelled of pine and herbs. Where did you learn to do this? She asked, watching his careful ministrations. My mother was Cherokee. She knew the healing properties of plants. His fingers were surprisingly gentle for hands so obviously accustomed to violence. These should heal clean if infection doesn't set in. Katherine studied his face in the firelight. Now that she could see him properly, she noticed features that spoke of his mixed heritage: high cheekbones, copper undertones to his skin, and straight black hair that fell just below his collar. Why did the Scorpion target you? Xavier asked, sitting back on his haunches. Katherine looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. My ranch sits on land they use as a route to move stolen cattle across the territory. He offered to protect me in exchange for certain considerations. When I refused, he decided to teach me a lesson. Xavier's expression darkened. Men like the Scorpion understand only one language: violence, Katherine said softly. Justice, Xavier corrected. Sometimes they're one and the same out here. They fell silent, the crackling of the fire filling the space between them. Katherine felt the weight of the day pressing down on her, and despite her best efforts, her eyelids began to droop. Sleep, Xavier said, noticing her struggle to stay awake. You're safe tonight. Katherine wanted to protest that she couldn't take his bedroll, but exhaustion claimed her before she could form the words. When she awoke, sunlight filtered through the pines surrounding the camp. For a moment, disoriented by sleep, she forgot where she was. Then the events of the previous day came rushing back, along with the pain in her wrists and shoulders. Xavier was already up, cooking something over a freshly built fire. He glanced up as she stirred. Good morning. Thought you might sleep the day away. Katherine sat up, embarrassed by her disheveled appearance. Her once neat hair had come loose from its pins, and her dress was torn and dirty from her ordeal. "I'm sorry to impose on you like this," she said, trying to smooth her hair with her fingers. Xavier shook his head. "No imposition." "Coffee?" She accepted the cup he offered, wincing as the movement pulled at her raw wrists. "Let me check those," Xavier said, kneeling beside her. His inspection was professional, his touch impersonal, yet Katherine found herself acutely aware of his proximity. "They're looking better. The salve seems to be helping." "Thank you," Katherine said, meeting his eyes. In the daylight she could see they were a deep brown flecked with gold. "For everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." A shadow crossed Xavier's face. "I've seen what the scorpion leaves behind. You don't need to thank me." He returned to the fire, dishing up a plate of bacon and cornbread. "Eat. We have a decision to make." Katherine accepted the food gratefully. "What decision?" "I can take you back to Silver Creek, or you can come with me while I track the scorpion." Katherine paused with the fork halfway to her mouth. "Why would I go with you?" Xavier's expression was grim. "Because the scorpion knows where you live. He'll come looking for you eventually, either to finish what he started or to make good on his threats." A chill ran through Katherine despite the morning sun. She knew Xavier was right. The scorpion wasn't a man to let an insult pass, and in his mind, her refusal was exactly that. "But why would you want me along? Wouldn't I slow you down?" Xavier shrugged. "I work better with bait." Katherine stared at him, shocked by his bluntness. The corner of his mouth lifted in a rare smile. That was a poor attempt at humor. "The truth is, I can protect you better if you're with me than if you're alone at your ranch. And yes, having you along might draw the scorpion out, but the choice is yours." Katherine considered her options. Returning to her ranch meant waiting in fear, jumping at every sound, wondering when the scorpion would return. The thought made her stomach clench. "If I go with you, what happens after? When you catch him? Then I collect the bounty and you return to your life." Xavier's tone was matter of fact. "Or start a new one if that's what you want." Katherine nodded slowly. "I'll go with you, but I want to be clear I'm not bait. I won't cower while you do all the fighting." Xavier studied her with newfound respect. "Fair enough. Can you shoot?" "My father taught me. I'm decent with a rifle, passable with a revolver." "Good." Xavier began packing up the camp. "We'll need to get you a horse and supplies. There's a trading post about 10 miles from here." As they prepared to leave, Katherine felt a strange mix of fear and anticipation. Her life had been turned upside down in the space of a day. Yet somehow, riding with this enigmatic bounty hunter seemed right, as if the path she was meant to take had suddenly revealed itself. The trading post was little more than a collection of rough-hewn buildings clustered around a dusty yard. As they approached, Katherine could see a stable, a small general store, and what appeared to be a saloon. A few horses were hitched outside, and a wagon loaded with supplies stood near the stable. Xavier helped Katherine dismount, keeping a protective hand on her elbow. "Stay close," he murmured. "Places like this attract all types." The proprietor of the general store was a portly man with a magnificent mustache that seemed to have a life of its own. He eyed them with curiosity as they entered. "What can I do for you folks?" he asked, leaning on the counter. "The lady needs supplies," Xavier said, "and we're looking for a horse." The storekeeper's gaze lingered on Katherine's torn dress and bandaged wrists, then flicked to Xavier. "Got some fine horses out back. As for supplies, we got most everything a body might need." While Xavier went to inspect the horses, Katherine selected necessities: a change of clothing, basic toiletries, and a sturdy hat to protect against the sun. The store's selection of women's clothing was limited, but she found a practical riding skirt and blouse that would serve better than her torn dress. The storekeeper wrapped her purchases in brown paper. "Your man's particular about horses," he commented, nodding toward the window where Xavier could be seen examining a bay mare. "He's not my man," Katherine corrected automatically. The storekeeper raised bushy eyebrows. "No offense intended, madam, just making conversation." He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "Word is the Scorpion's gang hit the stage from Leadville yesterday, took the strongbox and left 2 passengers dead. Territorial authorities are offering an extra 100 on his bounty now." Katherine's hand froze over her coin purse. "Yesterday?" The storekeeper nodded. "That's the word. Happened about 20 miles north of here." Katherine felt a chill despite the store's warmth. The Scorpion had left her tied to that tree and immediately gone to attack a stagecoach. The casual brutality of it made her blood run cold. Xavier returned leading a dappled gray mare. "She'll do," he said. "Seems gentle but has good stamina." He noticed Katherine's pale face. "What's wrong?" Katherine shared what the storekeeper had told her. Xavier's expression hardened. "We need to move," he said quietly. "If they hit the stage north of here, they'll be heading for the mountain passes. It's their usual pattern: strike quickly, then disappear into the high country. They paid for the horse and supplies and were back on the trail within the hour." Katherine, now dressed in her new clothes, felt more capable of facing whatever lay ahead. The gray mare proved to be exactly as Xavier had described: gentle but sure-footed. As they rode, Xavier explained his plan. "There's a pass about 30 miles from here that leads to an old mining valley. The Scorpions used it before as a hideout. My guess is they're headed there to divide their take and lie low until the heat dies down." "And then what?" Katherine asked. Xavier checked his Winchester, ensuring it was loaded and ready. "Then we wait for the right moment. 1 man and 1 woman against a gang of outlaws means we need every advantage we can get." Katherine nodded, appreciating that he included her in the plan rather than treating her as a burden. They rode through the day, stopping only briefly to rest the horses and eat a cold lunch of jerky and hardtack. Xavier was a man of few words, but Katherine found his silence companionable rather than awkward. When he did speak, it was with purpose, pointing out landmarks, sharing knowledge of the territory, or occasionally asking about her life before Colorado. As the sun began to set, they reached the foothills leading to the mountain pass Xavier had mentioned. He found a sheltered spot near a small stream for their camp, selecting it with an experienced eye for both comfort and defense. While Xavier tended to the horses, Katherine gathered wood for a fire. Her wrist still pained her, but the work felt good after a day in the saddle. By the time Xavier returned, she had a respectable blaze going. "Well done," he said, dropping his saddlebags near the fire. "You've camped before." Katherine smiled. "I've lived alone on a ranch for 3 years, Mr. Quincy. Building a fire is hardly a challenge." A hint of a smile touched Xavier's lips. "Fair point, Miss Zimmer." He unrolled his bedroll and then, to Katherine's surprise, produced a second one from his packs. "Picked this up at the trading post," he explained, seeing her expression. "Figured you deserved better than sleeping on the ground." The thoughtful gesture touched Katherine more deeply than she expected. "Thank you." They shared a simple supper of beans, salt pork, and coffee. As darkness settled around them, Katherine found herself studying Xavier's profile in the firelight, wondering about the man behind the stoic exterior. "Why did you leave Texas?" she asked impulsively. Xavier was silent for a long moment, and Katherine thought he might not answer. But then he set down his coffee cup and looked at her directly. "I killed a man," he said simply. "A rancher's son who thought his father's money put him above the law. He shot a shopkeeper for refusing credit right in front of me. When I tried to arrest him, he drew on me." Xavier's gaze returned to the fire. "I was faster." "That sounds like justice, not something to run from," Katherine observed. The rancher didn't see it that way. He owned the county judge, half the territorial legislators, made it clear my life wasn't worth a plugged nickel if I stayed. So you became a bounty hunter? Xavier nodded. The law has too many loopholes for men with money and influence. Bounty hunting is simpler the guilty pay, one way or another. Katherine considered his words. And the scorpion? Is this just another bounty for you? Something dark flashed in Xavier's eyes. No, the woman killed in that stagecoach robbery near Denver, she wasn't just the governor's niece. She was a friend. We grew up together back in Texas. Understanding dawned on Katherine. This is personal for you. Yes. The single word held a wealth of emotion, grief, anger, determination. Katherine reached across the space between them and laid her hand on his arm. I'm sorry. Xavier didn't pull away from her touch. For a moment they sat in silence, connected by shared purpose and growing understanding. We should get some rest, Xavier finally said, his voice rougher than usual. Tomorrow will be challenging. Katherine nodded, withdrawing her hand reluctantly. As she settled into her bedroll, she found herself more aware of Xavier than ever, his steady breathing, the way the firelight played across his features, the sense of controlled power that emanated from him even in repose. Sleep eluded her for a time as she contemplated the strange turn her life had taken. 3 days ago, she had been an independent rancher, content with her solitary existence. Now she was pursuing a dangerous outlaw alongside a man who both intrigued and unsettled her. The following morning dawned clear and cool. They broke camp efficiently, with the easy coordination of people accustomed to self-reliance. As they prepared to depart, Xavier handed Katherine a revolver. Colt Navy, he said. 6 shots, reliable at close range, keep it accessible. Katherine checked the weapon with practiced hands, then tucked it into the holster Xavier had provided. The weight of it against her hip was both reassuring and sobering. They rode into the mountain pass as the sun crested the eastern peaks. The trail narrowed, forcing them to ride single file with Xavier in the lead. Katherine's senses were heightened. Every sound, the creak of leather, the clatter of hooves on stone, the cry of a hawk overhead registering with unusual clarity. By midday, they had reached a vantage point overlooking the valley Xavier had described. Below, nestled among aspens and pines, stood a collection of abandoned mining cabins. Smoke rose from 2 chimneys, and several horses were corralled near what had once been the assay office. The scorpion. Katherine whispered, though there was no chance of being heard at this distance. Xavier nodded, lowering the spyglass he'd been using to survey the camp. 4 men that I can see, probably more inside. The scorpion usually travels with 8 or 9. Katherine studied the layout, noting the positions of the buildings and the natural features that might provide cover. What's the plan? Xavier considered for a moment. We wait until dark. Most of them will be drinking, gambling. Their guard will be down. We go in quiet, take the scorpion, and leave before his men know what's happening. And if things go wrong, Xavier's expression was grim, then we fight our way out, but let's aim for the quieter option. They retreated to a secluded hollow to wait for nightfall, securing the horses and preparing their weapons. As the afternoon waned, Katherine felt a growing tension, not just from the impending confrontation, but from the intensifying awareness between her and Xavier. "Why did you really bring me along?" she asked as they shared a cold supper. "The truth this time." Xavier met her gaze steadily. "Because I've seen what happens to people who cross the scorpion. He doesn't leave loose ends, especially not witnesses who can identify him. Your ranch would have been burned to the ground, and you—" He didn't finish the sentence. "So it was protection then, not using me as bait." Xavier's expression softened. "That was part of it, but there was something else, something in the way you held yourself when I found you. Most people in that situation would have been broken, begging. You were angry, Katherine smiled faintly. I've never been good at giving men what they expect. I've noticed. There was a warmth in Xavier's voice that hadn't been there before. It's refreshing. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Xavier cleared his throat and stood. We should get ready. Sun's almost down. They moved through the forest with careful steps, approaching the mining camp from the west where the trees grew closest to the buildings. Night had fully fallen, and as Xavier had predicted, the sounds of revelry emanated from the largest cabin. Laughter, the clink of bottles, occasional shouts as card games progressed. Xavier pointed to a smaller cabin at the edge of the camp. That'll be where the Scorpion stays, he whispered. He doesn't bunk with the men, keeps his distance, maintains control that way. They crept closer, using the shadows as cover. Katherine's heart pounded in her ears, but her hands remained steady on her revolver. When they reached the edge of the clearing, Xavier signaled for her to wait while he scouted ahead. Katherine watched as he slipped from shadow to shadow, a darker shape against the night. He moved with the silent grace of a predator, checking each building briefly before returning to her side. He's in the cabin I pointed out, Xavier confirmed. There's a guard at the door, but he's half asleep. Most of the gang is in the main building, drinking and gambling away their take from the stagecoach. How do we get past the guard? Xavier considered. Distraction. I need you to circle around to the east side of the camp. There's a stack of mining equipment, old pans, picks, that sort of thing. Wait until I'm in position, then knock it over. Katherine nodded, understanding the plan. The noise would draw the guard's attention, allowing Xavier to approach from the opposite direction. Be careful, Xavier said, his hand briefly touching her arm. If anything goes wrong, head back to the horses and ride for Silver Creek. Don't wait for me. Before Katherine could respond, Xavier melted into the darkness. She took a deep breath, then began making her way around the perimeter of the camp as instructed. The night was cool, and clouds had begun to gather, occasionally obscuring the quarter moon. She reached the pile of discarded mining equipment and positioned herself behind it. From her vantage point, she could see the guard Xavier had mentioned, a burly man with a shotgun propped against his shoulder. He seemed more interested in the flask in his hand than in keeping watch. Katherine waited, counting the minutes, giving Xavier time to get into position. When she judged the moment right, she pushed hard against the pile of equipment. It crashed to the ground with a tremendous clatter of metal against metal. The guard jerked upright, his shotgun at the ready. "Who's there?" he called, moving away from the door toward the source of the noise. As soon as his back was turned, Katherine saw Xavier emerge from the shadows behind him. There was a brief struggle, ending with the guard slumping unconscious to the ground. Xavier dragged him out of sight, then motioned for Katherine to join him. Together, they approached the cabin door. Xavier drew his revolver and nodded to Katherine to do the same. Then, with a sudden kick, he burst through the door. The Scorpion was seated at a small table, counting money from a leather satchel. He leaped to his feet at the intrusion, reaching for the gun at his hip. "Touch that pistol and it's the last thing you'll ever do," Xavier said, his voice deadly calm. The Scorpion froze, his hand hovering near his weapon. His eyes narrowed as he recognized Katherine. Well, the rancher woman. Seems the wolves didn't find you after all." Katherine kept her revolver trained on him, her hand remarkably steady despite the hatred coursing through her veins. Disappointed, the Scorpion's gaze shifted to Xavier. "Quincy, heard you were in the territory. Come to collect the bounty on my head, among other things," Xavier replied. "You've been busy the stagecoach from Leadville, the ranch near Silver Creek." The territorial governor has taken a personal interest in your capture. A slow smile spread across the scorpion's face. 2 against 9. Not good odds, Quincy. One of your men is already down, Xavier said, and the others are too drunk to be much use. It's over. The scorpion's expression hardened. With lightning speed, he flipped the table toward them, sending coins and bills flying through the air. In the same motion, he drew his pistol. Xavier fired first. The shot echoed in the small cabin, and the scorpion staggered backward, a red stain spreading across his chest. He fired wildly as he fell, his bullet splintering the door frame inches from Catherine's head. Shouts erupted from the main cabin as the gang realized something was wrong. Xavier quickly checked that the scorpion was down, then grabbed Catherine's hand. "Run!" They burst from the cabin just as the first outlaws emerged from the main building. Gunfire erupted behind them as they dashed for the cover of the trees. A bullet tore through Xavier's sleeve, drawing a grunt of pain, but he didn't slow his pace. They reached the forest edge with outlaws in close pursuit. "Keep going," Xavier urged, pushing Katherine ahead of him. "Get to the horses." "What about you?" Katherine demanded, refusing to leave him behind. "I'll hold them off." "Go." Reluctantly, Katherine continued through the forest, moving as quickly as she dared in the darkness. Behind her, she heard the crack of gunfire, Xavier buying her time to escape. She reached their horses and quickly untied them, her heart racing. The gunfire had stopped, which could mean either that Xavier had dispatched their pursuers or that he had been captured, or worse. Katherine made a swift decision. Mounting her mare, she led Xavier's stallion back toward the sounds of pursuit. She would not abandon him, not after all he had risked to protect her. The forest was eerily quiet now. Katherine moved cautiously, straining to see through the darkness. A shape materialized ahead, a man moving with a labored gait. "Xavier," she called softly. "Katherine." His voice was strained but unmistakable. "I told you to ride for Silver Creek." "I'm not leaving without you," she replied, dismounting to meet him. In the faint moonlight, she could see blood on his sleeve. "You're hit. Just a graze. The others won't be following. I made sure of that." Katherine helped him onto his stallion, then mounted her own horse. They rode through the night, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and the mining camp. Xavier's injury, though not life-threatening, clearly pained him, and Katherine insisted they stop at dawn to tend to it. She helped him remove his shirt, revealing a muscular torso marked with old scars. The bullet had indeed only grazed his upper arm, but the wound was deep enough to require cleaning and bandaging. "You're getting good at patching me up," Xavier commented as Katherine applied the same salve he had used on her wrists. "Let's not make it a habit," she replied, carefully wrapping a strip of clean cloth around his arm. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, the shared danger, the trust that had developed over their brief acquaintance, crystallizing into a deeper connection. Without conscious thought, Katherine leaned forward, closing the distance between them. Xavier's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with unexpected tenderness. "Katherine," he murmured, a question in his voice. She answered by pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a tentative exploration, then deepened into something more urgent. Xavier's arms encircled her, drawing her against his chest as if she were something precious he feared losing. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I didn't expect this," Xavier admitted, his forehead resting against hers. "Nor did I," Katherine replied, "but I don't regret it." They remained in their secluded camp for 2 days, allowing Xavier's wound to begin healing and giving the territory time to learn of the scorpion's demise. During those days, their connection deepened through shared stories, quiet moments, and an increasing physical awareness that made even casual touches meaningful. On the third morning, Xavier announced it was time to return to civilization. The territorial office in Denver will want confirmation of the Scorpion's death, and there's the matter of the bounty. Katherine nodded, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest at the thought of their journey ending. And then what? Xavier hesitated, then took her hands in his. That depends on you, he said quietly. I have no right to ask anything of you. Your life is in Silver Creek and mine. And yours, Katherine prompted when he trailed off. Xavier's thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands. I've been thinking it might be time to put down roots. Find a place to belong. Hope blossomed in Katherine's heart. Silver Creek has room for another ranch, she said, or perhaps for a partner in an existing one. A slow smile spread across Xavier's face, not the guarded half-smile she had seen before, but a full expression of happiness that transformed his features. Are you proposing a business arrangement, Miss Zimmer? Katherine returned his smile, emboldened by the warmth in his eyes. Perhaps something more personal, Mr. Quincy. Xavier drew her into his arms, his kiss a promise that needed no words to interpret. When they parted, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I never expected to find you tied to that tree, Katherine Zimmer. But I'm grateful every day that I did. Even though I've been nothing but trouble, she teased. Especially because of that, he replied, his eyes crinkling with humor. Life without a little trouble isn't worth living. 6 months later, the ranch outside Silver Creek had undergone a transformation. New fencing enclosed expanded pastures, a larger barn housed additional horses, and the cabin had been renovated and enlarged. The sign at the entrance now read Quincy and Zimmer Ranch, a testament to the partnership that had grown from adversity. Katherine stood on the porch, watching as Xavier rode in from checking the northern boundary. The sight of him still made her heart quicken, even after months of marriage. He dismounted with his usual grace, securing his horse before striding toward her. Everything all right? She asked as he climbed the steps to join her. Xavier nodded, drawing her into his arms. Perfect. The new calves are doing well and the boundary is secure. Katherine rested her head against his chest, savoring the solid warmth of him. I received a letter from the territorial governor today. The last of the Scorpion's gang has been captured near the Utah line. It's really over. Xavier pressed a kiss to the top of her head. It's been over for some time, but I'm glad to hear it. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. The land that had once seemed so harsh to Katherine now felt like home in a way Boston never had, not because it had changed, but because she no longer faced its challenges alone. Any regrets? Xavier asked, a question he still posed occasionally, as if part of him couldn't believe his good fortune. Katherine turned in his arms, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. Only that it took being tied to a tree by bandits for us to find each other. Xavier laughed, the sound warming her more than the evening sun. Next time, let's meet under less dramatic circumstances. Next time, Katherine agreed, her heart full with the certainty that if there were indeed other lives to live, other paths to walk, she and Xavier would find each other again with or without the help of bandits and moonlit rescues.